Hi, everyone. I'm Nate Shear, and this is Mind Force. Join us as we explore love, life, and learning, because your mind is what matters here. Today, we have Nadia Hagen, and today we'll be talking about setting healthy boundaries, determining your value, and intentionally creating an aligned life, living authentically, and stopping your inner critic, and allowing your ability to train your brain to believe in you. So we'll start with the warm-up, the who, what, why. Who are you? What do you do? And why are you here?
Hello, Nate. Thank you so much for having me as a guest on your
Absolutely.
show. I'm Nadia Hagen, as you said. I'm a self-love coach for high-achieving women recovering from people-pleasing. And I help my clients to set healthy boundaries and prioritize themselves so they can intentionally create their lives aligned with their values while building mutual and connected relationships. And all this without the need to pretend to be someone they are not. So that's who I am, what I do, and why do I do it? Because I had to learn all this stuff for myself, and it was actually a very long and challenging route to take. And I wished I had someone like me 20 years ago. And, I had a day where I woke up more or less and noticed that I don't know a single thing about me. I was so busy pleasing other people and meeting expectations and doing the right thing that I completely lost myself along the way. And that's not a life that feels like, yeah, I want to go out of bed and yeah, I'm fulfilled. That's like me. Oh, no. So that's the why I do what I do.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you found that and able to reach out and help other people. I feel like as I've had this show, I've really realized the last, 5 or 10 episodes that it's wild how much as humans will be discomfortable and continue on. We'll be in bad jobs, bad relationships, and we'll kind of just keep going. Like we will put up with a lot of things where we really need to stop and, turn and try something new and get back on track. And so it's awesome that you found it and were able to tweak that. I don't think that, setting boundaries is something that really comes natural to us, which kind of leads into the first warm-up question. What's a moment in your life where setting a boundary felt like an act of courage, and how did it change things for you?
I had several acts of courage, but I can remember the first one. It was in my career context. So I was still an employee and I started at a new job, a job I was so happy to have. So I was excited about it. And my new boss came to me, and I was a project manager in the software development industry. And he came and he said, Nadia, we have this project and I need you to have it ready in 3 weeks. I was saying, I'm sorry, no way. We're not going to do it in 3 weeks. And, I can still remember the look in his eyes, like, how can she dare? And I thought, he's going to fire me. He's going to fire me for being so disobedient. And I told him, I promise you, we need 6 weeks. But I promise you, after 6 weeks, you get your project, you get it tested, everything will work, everything will run smoothly. But if I tell you we're going to make it in 3 weeks, then I will come back to you and say, we will miss the deadline. So what's the point of it? And he was thinking a little bit. Maybe he gave me a chance. I don't know. But we had the project ready 4 weeks later. So 2 weeks earlier, everything worked. And that was an act of trust building. But it took me a lot of courage to risk this new job. And now I could be instantly fired. But for me, it was the right thing to do. So here we are.
So did he come back and say, I'm glad you were able to set that? Or was there any feedback later on?
No, not that. But he never questions my deadlines again. And that was something that was so beautiful, and it refers beautifully to boundaries. I might feel so uncomfortable, like an act of courage, if we have to say no to something. But actually, if we do and we stay in our integrity, then we build trust massively. And I never got questioned again when we were talking about deadlines, because people knew I deliver with my team. Because, the thing I did was I was talking to all team members involved, and we found a deadline where everybody was standing behind. So we made things work. And having this trust was definitely worth the courage.
Yeah, I think being able to communicate is really, powerful and gets the point across and makes sure you're on the same page. I know previously I lived in Japan, and it's interesting how the cultures are different in different areas. Because in Japan, they're very, conflict averse and things like that. And so me being in a leadership position, when we'd ask for things, they always wanted to try to, make sure they were pleasing and things like that. So it kind of agreed to everything. And sometimes it was not possible. So you're like, oh, can you get it done this week? Yeah. and then it wouldn't get done that week. You were confused. And so I was out there for 3 years. And so the first year it was kind of confusing, but you kind of learn along the way. They're just going to kind of agree to the things that are going on. And you have to kind of learn to figure out, like, stop and pause and try to ask, is this actually realistic? Can you help me understand? And so you can get through that communication, because it'll kind of agree. So just different conflict averse and the way that different people were raised, which I'm sure we'll get into as we go through. The next question I had was, try to get a fun one. If your questions or your values were a playlist, what would be the theme song that represents your core beliefs?
I do not have a specific song that comes to mind, but it would probably be something from Frank Sinatra. Something with a little bit of melancholy, a little bit of sadness, a lot of hope, a lot of playfulness. You can hear it over and over again. It never gets boring.
Classic.
Yeah, definitely something like this.
Okay, Frank Sinatra.
What would be yours? Do you have one?
Boy, mine would be, I don't know what the song would be, but something along the lines of, being a little weird and dancing to my own drum. I think I've always kind of done it. I've never done it intentionally. It's something that I think is odd, because my little brother many years ago mentioned, like, that I always seem to do my own thing and don't really, concern with what other people think. And I'd never really thought of it. I just kind of did whatever I wanted. And so I've always been a little weird. And so it would be something about being weird, which I don't even know if there's a song for that. Yeah, I know, like, as a kid, you could do like those theme song things and try to pick one for you. I wish I could remember, what the theme song was for my life. I know that I did one based on what the number one song was when you were born. And I think it was Santana. I forget what that song is called. It's the one with Santana and the guy from Matchbox 21 or Matchbox 11. I can't remember. Rob Thomas, that's his name. Anyway, so I think it'd be something like that. I've always just kind of been a little bit unique and different, and try to, hopefully make the world better for everybody. And then the last question I had for you, what's the most unusual or creative way you found to silence your inner critic?
Unusual way. I think I'm more into effective ways, to be honest.
That's good.
Something I have learned is that, the inner critic it's a mean one. Doesn't matter if it's a he or a she, but this thing never shuts up. Sorry for my wording.
No, that's good.
I think, I don't get it silenced completely, but what I've learned is that we all do have it. It's completely normal, so it's not. And I think the turning point for me was to learn that this is actually a voice in my head. Sounds weird, but that it's not me,
Yeah.
And I gave this voice a place. So that's maybe a good tip for the listeners too. When I have this voice coming up or other voices, I'm mentally okay. So just to let everybody know about the voices in my head. But I imagine having a long, big table, and every voice gets a place on this table, and I consider them being consultants. So even though the critical voice is mean and harsh sometimes, there is a reason behind it and why we hear it. So pretty often it refers back to situations we might not even remember consciously anymore, but it tries to protect us, to keep us safe. So I try to listen not to the mean things, but to the reason behind and get the gold out of it. And then I listen to all my consultants, the big tech with all the voices, and like a CEO, you have all your consultants, you have all the experts, and you're listening to their advice. And then I'm making my decision, which is the right decision for me. And sometimes I take them in account, sometimes I don't.
I think that's pretty similar to, like, the reason we have fear and other things. I think that's something I'd love to do an episode on at some point, because we have fear built in because we used to be caveman. We needed to avoid danger. We needed to not get hurt. And so I think a lot of times we are freaked out and scared to try new things and, lose our income and try a new job or leave a relationship because it feels comfortable. And all those things are built in from, way, way back in the day. But I think, you got to take in all the information, like you said, and then make the best choice. Fear might be one of those things at the table, but I think you got to weigh all the different things, because I think a lot of times we look at the here and now and it's like, oh, it's scary now. But if you are in an uncomfortable job or relationship, and then, 5 or 10 years, you get to look back and realize your life is, 100 times better than you could have imagined, even though it was scary when you took that first step. Now that you've made the steps and now you have a better life. So that is interesting. It's interesting how, deep rooted and how far back that goes with it, fear and other things.
I have to share something here, because something that I've learned, and that was seriously a game changer, is it's like, as we are designed, as you said, our brain is actually not designed to make us happy. That's not our brain's task. Our brain is in charge of keeping us alive. And when you're in a really bad situation, bad job, bad relationship, whatever it is, but you're still alive, your brain achieved its job. It knows, okay, I know everything that is coming. It's not comfortable. It's really bad, but we are surviving in this. So we're gonna stay here, because as soon as we move and things are gonna change, I don't know if I will be able to keep you alive. And then I'm getting, all these nervous things, and your brain doesn't like this. So our brain was never designed to make us happy. It's designed to keep us alive. And I think our hearts are the better consultant to make us happy.
That's a good no. Yeah. Different things for different outcomes, I guess. If you need the logical and the, keeping you alive, you go with the brain, but other times you got to go with the heart, which I guess goes back to your point on the consultants at the table. Like, which one are you gonna, maybe you got to listen to both, take the information as, make the best decision, and then move forward. And maybe sometimes it is the brain, and other times maybe the heart.
Yes, definitely.
So to finish up the warm up, I wanted to see if you have a question for me.
Yeah, I would love to know. I think we will talk a little bit about boundaries. What is your personal experience with setting boundaries, saying no? Does it come easily, naturally to you, or is it a challenge? Is it always a challenge, or sometimes? And what do you think? Why is it like it is?
Yeah, so I would say I'm probably awful at this. I love helping people. So I'm definitely in like the people pleasing, and I think way too much on what people are thinking and things like that, even though earlier I said I dance to the beat of my own drum. It really depends on the situation and the environment and the relationship and things like that. But yeah, I don't think this is an easy thing. I don't think it's something that's really ingrained. It must be, as you were brought up or things like that. I was alone with me and my mom as I was growing up. So it was kind of her and I against the world, and, struggling through different, apartments and welfare and different things. So I think that bond from the beginning probably makes it a little bit different when, we had to kind of stick together and get through things to make it. So I think, as we talked about, the heart and the brain probably resorted more to like the mind and, surviving and getting through things. I'd love to do a better job. So hopefully with the advice I hear today, maybe I can do a little better job. But I'd like to say it doesn't probably come naturally, I don't think. I think this is something that's kind of taught and ingrained as you go along, because I think we probably resort to surviving and just pushing on until, you have an aha or some type of moment where you wake up, like you said, and try to make that change. That's what I would think.
Thank you so much for sharing this with me. It's so interesting for me to always get the insight how this works for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll continue a little bit more on the setting healthy boundaries. Can you share a time when establishing a boundary transformed a challenging relationship or situation in your life?
Yes, there are a lot of. I'm going to think about the one to pick. I would say the relationship it changed the most is the relationship I have to my partner. Because the more close, the more intimate a relationship is, the more difficult it becomes to say no. Also, the more transformative in a good way it becomes. 15 years ago, I've been the absolute prime example of a people pleaser. So I would say yes, even before you've asked me. And I have learned to, in a kind way, very clearly but kindly express what I feel and what I want. And that doesn't mean everybody has to accommodate my wishes, my needs, my wants, but being able to show up authentically and vulnerably and, have a little bit of courage. It's an act of courage to show who you are, to say, I'm hurt, actually, I'm sad, or I feel lonely, or there is something I need, instead of, oh, I'm having everything together, everything is perfect. Yes, of course, that changes a relationship, because So often people who are people pleasing and saying yes all the time, they think they need to do this to build relationships, to not be rejected and abandoned and all these things. Whereas in fact, not being honest and authentic saying yes always hinders a true and mutual connection. Because only in the moment when I show myself and I'm vulnerable and I'm human and then I'm kind of, in German, we say you can get a grip on people, and it means you can really see them. You can start to feel them. They become more real on an emotional level. And that actually enables the other person to decide, do I want to give her what she asked for? Can I bring to the table what she needs? Are we on the same page? And this truly transforms a relationship deeply.
Yeah, and that's one of the core reasons I think I started the show. I think we have stigmas and a lot of bad thoughts of different things. So I think mental health as a whole is seen as this negative thing, as some form of weakness. And so I remember I wanted to start the show and I went to a suicide prevention class at work and they brought in a guy named Robert Swanson. He's retired now, but he goes around and he shares this story and he's walking through this story of this person that attempted suicide not once but twice, was not successful, had kids, had a family. And then as the story develops, you realize that it's him. So he's telling his own personal story. And so at the end, he said, one of the things I get asked all the time is, how could you get up there? How could you share this story? How could you be vulnerable? That seems really awkward and whatnot. And like his answer, I think I'll remember for the rest of my life. He said, if I help one person, it's all worth it. And so I think that's something that's super powerful because we see this vulnerability as weak and opening up is weak, but that's power. He gets up there, gets on that stage, and is probably saved, however many people, even if it's only one. I mean, one human saved is already a massive value. So I hope that people start to understand that mental health is important, getting taken care of is important, and really, vulnerability is super important. I remember, being in a leadership position when I took one of my first areas, there seems to be a gap between the leader and the people. And they're thinking you have everything squared away and you have everything figured out. And it wasn't until I jotted down some notes and I'd been in there for a few months. I came in, I open up and say, I've lost with my grandparents and, I've gone through a divorce and I do, shared custody and all these things. And I lost my dad, a few years ago. And I go through these things and it's like not to be this negative Nancy and bring everyone down, which I don't do it immediately because I don't want to like freak, the news section out right off the bat. So I do the skim the wave tops at the beginning and then 3 or 4 months in, go a little bit deeper. But I hope to make that connection because I know, we have a policy where we say open door policy for the leaders, but like if they're so disconnected, you never really want to go. So I hope by bringing up some of those things, opening up a little bit, being a little vulnerable, like I'm just a human too. Like I'm in a different position. I have a different role. I look at things a little bit different. But after that, like human to human, and I'm not saying I've seen everything. It's just to bridge that gap. So if you want to come in, sit down, let's figure out, like, do you just want to vent and get all this stuff out and go away? Or do you want to try to solve it? We can start making phone calls and whatnot. But I think vulnerability is so powerful when it's not seen that way. Unfortunately, it's just one of those old thoughts, right?
Yes, absolutely. I always say trust is not a one-way road. If I want you to trust me, I need to have the courage to start trusting you and give you something of me, to let go of the perfect facade, of the perfect image. And, the people who use our openness or vulnerability to judge us, they will judge us anyway, no matter what we do, no matter what we say, even if we are completely perfect. I mean, there are people out in this world, and that was an aha moment for me too, who think the 90s supermodels, Claudia Schiffer, she's ugly. And I think, yeah, okay, if somebody finds Claudia Schiffer ugly, okay, so don't even try to make everybody happy because no way. And I think it's for those who do not judge us for being vulnerable, for them, it allows, it gives this feeling of, I'm not the only one. I'm not weird. I'm not enough in some way. I'm not insufficient, or there's nothing wrong with me, because it seems that other people have the same challenges. So maybe I'm just human. Maybe we are all just human on a path called life without the manual, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all just trying to get through this crazy thing called life, and there's no, owner's manual or instructions. I always love when people are coming up on having kids. They're like, "Oh, do you have any advice?" Like, no, not really. Like, try your best to keep them alive, and whatever you feel, is right at that given time, go for it, because you're gonna hear, you gotta wrap them, don't wrap them, put them on their back, put them on their side. Everyone's got their own. So if you feel that's good, then go with it. Because I know, like, the big one I remember is the like co-sleeping. Like, oh, they should be in the bed or not in the bed, in the bassinet. Like, if you feel comfortable and you can take care of it in whatever way, just do it. Because there's been plenty of books written on parenthood, but I don't know if any of them have it all squared away or all right. It's just whatever works at the time. That, and I feel like they flip it all the time. Even with us as adults, I feel like I've heard like, oh, red wine's good for you. It's not good for you. And then like chocolate was good for you. And then it wasn't good for you. And I'm like, oh, geez, we can't even figure out what's right or not.
And, I think it comes down to we are all so different, even though we have so much in common. But with the children, I need to laugh so hard, because I thought, as a coach and as learning so much about the inner child and, healthy development, I thought I'm a pro of raising kids before I even got one. And then I became a mom. And, my daughter turned everything, really everything upside down. The moment I think, no, I got it, I figured it out, then she changes, she grows, whatever it is, and I start from zero. And I think, what works for me, and that applies to everything, not only our children, but we as humans, with eating patterns. Some people need more protein than others, and we're so individual, and we need to take this into account. The same with boundaries. What works for me might probably not work for you. And it's about figuring out what's the right thing for me and how does it work. We can share our experiences, but at the same time, I think it's important to stay open that other people have a different background, different characteristics, and therefore different experiences and different things that might work for them.
I think that's another good example. You were talking about not worrying about like what other people think, because I know parenthood is funny. You have people that aren't parents yet, and like we give the tablet or do different things, and people will be like, I would never give my kid a tablet. I was like, okay, well, you go ahead and have one. And then, they want your attention 24/7, and, you'll see if you can make it and how long you can make it before you need to give some TV or something so you can have a moment to yourself. But yeah, it's always funny from the outside, and just so funny how the kids are so different. Like I remember, having the girl, and the girl would like, slowly get down and like slide off the couch and be safe and, make sure she got her feet on the ground. And the boy just tries to walk off the couch. I'm like, face first, like off the end, like 1 year old. You can just tell immediately, like they're nothing the same. And that's all the way back to when they could barely walk. You're immediately like, this is not the same. So whatever rule I had for this one is not going to work for the other one. But yeah, I wanted to ask you a question. So I definitely, struggle with the people pleasing. So what advice would you give to someone who struggles with guilt or fear when saying no?
So the first thing I would advise is train yourself to not say yes instantly. I give you a good phrase that you can use in nearly every occasion. Just say something like, thank you for asking. I need to check my schedule. And give yourself some time. So now you have one time that you can use to feel into your body. What does exactly feel uncomfortable? Do you feel any tension? What are your worries coming up? What's the story behind it? And that gives you time to find out what you truly want and what you're also capable to deliver or not deliver. And it also gives you time to create an answer that is honest, that says what you want to say, but does it in a way that's kind enough for the situation and the relationship you have. You can say no in so many ways. You can even say no without saying no. I have an example for this one.
Okay, I was going to ask.
Yeah, give yourself the gift of time to craft a phrase that feels aligned, where you can go back to the other person and just give them your answer. And at the same time, be prepared to receive pushback. Because if you have been the one saying yes always, people expect you to say what yes. And when you start saying no, they're like, wait, what? Nate is saying, no, I didn't expect this. Nate, are you serious? Do you mean what you say? Or do you just have a mood? So let me
Mm,
try again. And that's not even mean or toxic or with bad intention. This is just completely normal human behavior. And, you can take this time to prepare for your pushback too. And then when you go back to the interaction, you're feeling very well equipped. You are feeling much more centered and calmer. So it might still feel a little bit uncomfortable if it's the first time, because things we've never done, things we are learning, they normally don't feel comfortable in most cases.
yeah.
So don't forget that. But you're very well equipped, and it probably gets much easier with this one.
Yeah. You gotta do it. Practice makes perfect. So this question is kind of similar, but maybe just worded a little bit different. How can boundaries empower us to protect what matters most without feeling selfish or unkind?
I love this question. That's so juicy. So, the first thing is I always start with defining personal values when I work with a client. So, here I'm referring to the 3 to 5 most important personal values. So, think about freedom or security. And we can take this to a level where we can create a practical example. So if you are an employee, you have more security because you know when you're going to work, you know how much you are expected to work, and you know exactly what you're going to be paid at the end of the month. That's a lot of security. At the same time, you do not have a lot of flexibility. You need to take orders. You need to serve in the bigger context of the company, which might not always align to your own values. So maybe you're someone who is okay with not knowing exactly how much money you're going to make at the end of the month, but you prefer the flexibility to be there for your children when they need you. Maybe you're the one who's getting up in the middle of the night and wants to work and not on a regular schedule. So in this case, freedom is more important for you. And we can use these scenarios to find out and discover our personal values. So when I now come into a situation where I notice something is off, that's a clear sign. Okay, a boundary is needed. And you said boundaries, and that's very, very well said. Protect something. They always protect something. They might protect our time, our money, our energy, sometimes our mood. There are so many things. Boundaries create safe spaces. They protect resources, I always say. So when I notice something is off and I have my values, at hand, then I can check in. What do I actually need to protect here? Is it maybe just my mood? Having this friend who's calling you every single day to complain about everything and life, and everything is so terrible. And after the phone call, you're like, oh gosh, I need a couple of minutes for myself. There you're just protecting your mood and your energy, but it's worth it. So when you know exactly what you are protecting and why it is important that you protect this, then it doesn't feel so mean and selfish anymore. And the next thing is it's about the way we communicate them. I can communicate a boundary very harsh and in a very rejecting way. And I can also communicate it in a way that it builds bridges and makes the other person feel seen. So, as an example, with a friend calling, we can say something like, I really appreciate and love that I'm a person of trust for you and you're calling me when you want to chat about something. But I have the impression that you're very dissatisfied with certain things in your life. And I know that's not a good place to be. So, how can we change this instead of complaining and making it even worse?
Wow.
That's
That's way different, isn't it? You could just say, "Stop calling me."
Yeah. And that can save a relationship. And in this scenario, you said no without even saying no. But
There
I
it
have a different
is.
one too.
That's good. So for the values, there's so many things out in the world. I feel like at this given time, there seems like there's more pulling at us in different directions than like ever. It feels like we got kids and family and friends and work and things like that. How do you sit down with people and get them to narrow those things down? Because I feel like if you ask somebody their values, they're probably going to say friends, family, and, something like, right off the bat. But how do you get them to get more true with themselves?
So if somebody is saying friends and family, I would ask, if you can't have both and you need to decide for one, which one would it be? So there are several different ways to find this out. And actually, it's a very fun thing to do. The first thing I recommend is just write down all the values that are coming to your mind. So don't start searching for value lists in the internet because you will find 1,000 and they just might trigger your brain into the FOMO thing. Just write down what comes to your mind because that's your life, that's your relationship with values you have, and that's the one that counts.
Mm.
And over a period of time, maybe the next day, look at your list and then start to cross out half of them. And very often when we need to decide, do I go for friends or do I go for family? What do I value higher? Then we will find out where our true priorities lie.
Yeah, one thing it made me think of earlier is I go on these runs and they're guided runs. So there's a coach, he talks in your ear. They're by Nike. I hate running, but this is the only way I've been able to slightly enjoy running. Coach Bennett, he's one of my favorite coaches. He actually has his own podcast now. But one of the things he talks about is a recovery run. And in the recovery run, no one wants to do them because they're not fun. They're not sexy. Everyone wants to do the long run or the fast run or the cool runs. But really, the majority of your run should be recovery. And then you sprinkle in the other ones. And one of my favorite things that you talked about was that protecting. It's an active thing. It's a thing that you do. It doesn't just happen. And so one of the ones he talks about is defining the word recovery. So he looked it up in the dictionary and it says to regain something that was lost or stolen. So you have to go and get it and recover. Recovery doesn't, I think sometimes we think, oh, well, I'll just sit on the couch or I'll do this and like recovery will come towards you. I think in both these, the recovery and the protect, it's an action, it's a verb, it's something you go and do. It's not going to just happen if you don't, protect your time. It's just going to keep getting taken. In the same way, if you don't recover, you're not going to be ready for those runs and things. So I guess slightly different, but it made me think of the same thing where like you need to go and do it. So someone's like, not sure what to do. You need to take the step forward and try to get after these things. They don't just come to you. And so I love the regain something that was lost or stolen. You gotta recover and get after it.
That's absolutely beautiful. And something that comes to my mind here is that when we come to this world and we grow up, I see this with my daughter. She's 4 in the meantime. And children can say no very strongly. They know exactly what they do not want. So we have all been there, saying, no, I don't want that is natural. But we've been trained and conditioned to not hurt other people's feelings, to put their needs and their feelings above our own. And, we let this become too big. It's going to steal our happiness. It's going to steal things that are as important as our purpose in life, as the love we have to give. This is seriously a huge thing. Saying no can change and transform your life so much.
So with the people that you've had as your clients and things like that, have you seen a theme? Is it work that kind of drives that? Because I feel like, management and being, directed to do stuff, does it come from that? Do you see more people that are self-employed or is it just kind of all over the board? Like what happens between being a kid and then becoming an adult and then all of a sudden we got to take care of everyone but ourselves?
I love this question so much. So I think the first thing is it's all over the board. I've seen it more with people who are top performers, high achievers, people who are ambitious. I think it comes from a trained pattern and, it comes from childhood. So I know as parents, we probably do this by ourselves once in a while, even if we're not proud of, but behave well. Don't be too loud. Don't be too noisy. Don't be as you are because right now that's not good enough. So please, reduce your own needs and accomplish a little bit more the needs of those around you. That's what's standing behind, even if it's not said directly, it's indirectly communicated. And if we have parents who are critical, who wants us to, these children who behave always very, very well, depending on their age, that's just not normal. A 3, a 4, a 5-year-old is not a little adult. Just not. They
Yeah.
are crazy, loud little creatures who are exploring the world. And while doing this, they sometimes can get pretty much on our nerves.
That's funny. My son just got finished up with flag football, so American football. And it was kind of funny because they're 6-year-olds running around the field, and the coach would get kind of frustrated. He's like, why are they not listening? Or aren't they running these plays? I'm like, because they're 6? Like, they don't know plays. They don't know what they're doing. They don't even know what positions they're in. Because I asked my son, I'm like, do you know what position you're holding? He's like, I don't know. I was like, do you know if you're on offense or defense? No. Like, he doesn't even know what's going on. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. He's like, it seemed like he wanted them to just sit and, like, listen and like they were high school level or whatever level. But I'm like, they're not running plays. They're running around like crazy. They don't even go the right direction. They run into their own end zone and score on themselves. So I thought that was pretty funny. But I wanted to transition over because one of my favorite quotes I've mentioned on the show a few times, and unfortunately, got to reiterate because I love it so much. So I guess got to listen to it one more time. But one of my favorite quotes from Susan Scott in Fierce Conversations is, you're having conversations all the time, and sometimes they involve other people. And so she's talking about, talking to yourself and that inner critic. So I'd like to get a few more questions in there. What's a memorable time when you silenced your inner critic and proved it wrong?
One time was when I was in a gym class, and it was so hard. And I thought, I don't want to suffer so much just for losing a couple of pounds. I hate this. And then the trainer, she was like screaming at us, you are doing this for yourself. And I was like, actually, she's right. I'm doing this because I want to feel healthy. I want to feel fit. I just want to have this beautiful booty,
It's for you, yeah.
And that was the moment where my inner critic said, yeah, but it's so hard. And I thought, be quiet. That just doesn't matter. It's an hour. And we are going to be so proud afterwards. So in this case, just keep quiet.
Boy, yeah, that's a powerful one. Back to my runs, the coach that jumps in your ear, he's like, even if you do 2 minutes or whatever, getting up, getting your shoes on, getting out there. He talks a lot about runs have multiple purposes because people are like, oh, yeah, it's just for running. But he's like, it's not. You process thoughts, you feel like you accomplish things. So he talks about every run has a purpose, and then you kind of shift that into purposes because there's multiple things going on. So even if you just go around the block, you've gotten up, you got the blood moving. So I think there's a lot of power in that. We've heard about, like making your bed in the morning, you accomplish something, you get things going. Even though it's simple things, it gets you going for the day. Are there any specific techniques or exercises you use to reframe negative self-talk into empowering thoughts?
Yeah. There's one thing that works wonders. If I have a massive negative assumption or self-talk, like you're never gonna achieve X, write it down. And then divide your piece of paper, but you really need to do this in written form because it works differently with your brain than it does when we just contemplate about it. And on the other column, write down 3 examples that prove your first assumption wrong. Like, for example, there was a time when I believed, oh, you're not going to finish anything. Because my dad, when I didn't do what he wanted me to do, he said, you never finish things. So that was something that I started to believe about myself, and I wrote it down. And on the other side, I wrote down things like, oh, I've actually finished my skill. I finished my studies. I have finished so many things. So when I look at this, then I notice that there are specific things that I do not finish because I don't want to finish them, which is my choice of life. And that is totally okay. I'm not a person who doesn't finish things. That's actually not true. So the first advice I have is seriously write it down and prove yourself wrong.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a good example. I wanted to ask earlier, and I missed it, but I love stories. My favorite thing is storytelling. I think that really helps us, and I think that goes back to the caveman days and things like that. That's how we pass knowledge and things like that. And so, could you share a story of a time when living in alignment with your values or a client helped them overcome that difficult choice? They went back, reflected on their values, and it got them through.
Yeah, I can remember one client. It was a man. He was employed as a consultant. He was very, very successful. So he was good at his job. He liked his job. He liked his colleagues. He liked the projects. He made a lot of money. And we were talking about, he actually wanted to do something differently. He wanted to do something with a specific purpose to make the world a better place. And he wanted to build his own company doing this. And he said to me, Nadia, when I decide to move away from my employer and then do my own thing, I have a fiance, I'm gonna get married, we're gonna have a child, and we drive this beautiful BMW, and this BMW will probably be taken away. So there is a price to pay for this, and I'm not ready if I'm able or willing to pay this. So
Mm,
we worked through this because, the choices, very often it seems, or people are telling us it's so easy. You just make a choice and you follow through. But every choice has a price tag. If I choose yes, it has a price tag. And if I choose no, it has a price tag too. So in this scenario, we worked through the fears of, in fact, it was not thinking, oh, I'm not able to build the company. It was more about, I will not be able to provide financially as my family is trusting me. So in this case, very often it's about finding and creating a plan that works in these specific circumstances instead of falling back into the generalization like, if I do this, I don't have the money. If I do that, I can't. It's very general, the things that our critics are telling us. But if we get into detail, then quite often we can recognize that we are rather talking to a part of us that's absolutely scared instead of someone telling us what we can and cannot achieve.
yeah, that makes sense. So, speaking of living authentically, how do you navigate the tension between being true to yourself and meeting the expectations of others?
I think in the meantime, I got pretty good and being able to disappoint people.
Being okay with it.
Yeah, absolutely okay. The first thing is I learned to be alone, which isn't a bad thing. So I mean, with a 4-year-old, I hardly have alone time. But if I do, I enjoy alone time where I can do whatever I want or do nothing at all. Nobody wants anything from me. So that's a good thing. And it's also with a business and a child, time is very, very precious and very short. There's never enough time for all the things we want to do. So that's the resource. And I'm very aware of the resource I very often protect because if I get into situations where I lower my energy because I hate being there, or I just get into a bad mood because of certain things, people, whatever it is, then that's costing me time and efficiency. And, we don't have unlimited time. So I own this one to me that I use my time for the things that matter. And something I learned is it's really a difference whom do I disappoint. So, if I disappoint a 40, 50-year-old grown man or woman, yeah, exactly. You know, you're a grown person, so you can deal with this. You're responsible for your life, for your choices, for whatever. And if you're making bad choices, whatever it is, it's your responsibility. I'm not your therapist. So if I'm disappointing my daughter, that's differently because
Mm.
she's still little, she's still dependent. So quite a couple of scenarios, I would choose to not disappoint her. But the thing is, when we make an active choice here, then it's not costing us. So if I choose to not do what I want to do on this weekend, but instead do something that creates a memorable experience for her, then this fills up my own cup and makes me happy and connects me to her. So in the end, I haven't lost time. I haven't lost energy. I haven't lost anything. I've gained a lot of things, but that required me to work through all the layers that are involved in deciding if I say yes or no. And sometimes it still happens, I think, for all of us, no matter how an expert you are of boundaries. Sometimes you're saying no and you're disappointing people, and it hurts a little bit. Sometimes that happens, and sometimes it's a thing we just need to work through. I would love to tell you something differently, but yeah, that's
I
it.
think that goes back to what you said earlier. There's cause and effect, right? You do something and there's that cause, and then there's second and third order effects. And so I think you mentioned it perfectly when you said it's not always easy. It's not, oh, just make the decision and see it through and it's just all good. I mean, there's still going to be second and third order things, ripple outward. So you need to be okay and solid into the decision you made because, like you said, you took in the information, you made the choice. And then at that point, you got to own whatever comes out of it because there are going to be things. But I think that is a good reminder where we want things to be easy and, because I looked back at my values, it's going to work out perfectly and no one's going to get hurt. It's like, no, you went back and you focused on what was important to you. It doesn't mean it was going to be perfect. It just means that's what you're supposed to do. And, the grown people can get over it.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And
I think that's good.
life is lifing. So no matter how well I prepare my decision, how aligned my decision is, in fact, I never know 100% how it turns out in the end.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to try to bring it all together, Nadia. So how does setting boundaries, identifying values, overcoming your inner critic in harmony to create a fulfilling, authentic life? How does it all come together?
It's a circle. It comes together as a circle. It strengthens each other and it allows us to intentionally create a life that feels true to us. So we've talked about bad relationships, we've talked about bad jobs, and I think we all can relate to a situation where we woke up and thought, why the am I in this job? What the happened to my life? Why am I with a person who makes me feel miserable and hating life? And that's a very, very sad and concerning place to be. And it's actually wasting our most precious resource, time. Because with this time, we could have created something that's beautiful. Maybe not always easy, not perfect, but beautiful in its own way. So it comes together as allowing us to create a life that's not a perfect life, but that's our unique, true, and authentic version of who we are. And I think who we are is a big part of the magic of the universe, a part of God, however you want to refer to it. But there is something unseen, beautiful, magically wondrous within each of us. And that has to be expressed.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's the perfect reminder. I think if anyone's out there, stuck in those situations where you're just uncomfortable, obviously, there's going to be some discomfort in life. As we said, there's no manual. It's not perfect. But if it's a little too much than just a little discomfort, I think you got to take that step. Leap of faith, make sure you're not just winging it. If it's your job or finances, make sure you're not just, jumping off the cliff and, making a crazy decision. But think back and, in the future, in 5 and 10 years, where you're never where you thought you could possibly be. Things are awesome. Things are much better than you thought. Again, not perfect, like you said, but think of, that change that you could have. If it's not comfortable, you're not where that you should be, then I say get after it, try to figure something out. But Nadia, I wanted to give you the final takeaway. So what would you want listeners to take away from this wonderful episode?
I want you to take away the absolute certainty that you can learn to say no and that you can, it's practice. So you don't have to accommodate everybody and everything in your life and losing yourself. You're absolutely required to be yourself, to bring into this beautiful life your beautiful, unique essence. And something I can promise, and I can't promise a lot of things, but something I can definitely promise is that creating your authentic life by saying no to what not aligns to you is a practice. It becomes easier the more we train it, until one day it will be second nature. So if someone like me, who has been a prime example of a people pleaser, can say no absolutely comfortably without thinking about it, then I can guarantee you can too. And you're absolutely entitled to do so.
Awesome. Thank you, Nadia. I ask listeners, please provide feedback. Let me know what you think on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Buzzsprout, all over the place. Give me thoughts, comments. Let me know if you want to jump on the show. But I love you all. See ya.